Hi, I'm Lottie Smith and I'm an artist from the northeast of England. I'm a sculptor and I work mostly with cardboard, so I'm in my studio at the moment, surrounded by some little bits and pieces which are leftovers. I've also been asked before to make 2 inventions to bring them to life for little inventors. Both of the prototypes of invention ideas that I've made were both from climate challenges. So the first one was the compost bee by Harrison. This was to help reduce food waste and help people compost at home when they didn't have a garden. And the second one was the Sea Sweeper by Laney, and that was designed in order to help clean up the oceans, to help remove all of the plastics from the oceans and help the animals that live there. So I'm here today to try and teach you some prototyping skills which may come in useful in bringing your own invention ideas to life. So because the challenge we set for you was to do with the wind and inventions that use that, today we're going to be making a wearable windsock. Windsocks are normally a tube, like a sock with no toes. They're used at airports to indicate wind direction and speed. So once you've made yours, maybe you could go out onto the playground and see whether yours work the same. I'll also explain how you can adapt it so you can make your windsock hang from a tree or a fence in your garden. These are the tools and materials that you're going to need to make your wearable windsock. So you're going to need a ruler, a pair of scissors, pencil, some tape, either masking tape or normal sellotape, a hole puncher, some string, so any kind of string that you have or a thick thread. You're going to need some plastic bottles. Bigger bottles are a little better, but you can do this with the little ones as well. You're going to need some old plastic bags or plastic packaging, so this is kind of plastic you get from cereal, and you can probably find some better colours from high street shops as well. And if you don't have any plastic and you're not planning on hanging your windsock outside in the rain, you can use tissue paper, colourful tissue paper like this. And finally, you're going to need some corrugated cardboard. So that's cardboard like this with the wiggles down the side. It's the sort of things that the boxes that might get delivered to your house in the post are made out of. So first up, we're going to need our plastic bottle, and we're going to be cutting a ring out of this as the base for our windsock, which will be the part that we're attaching all of the plastic pieces to, like this. So first up, if you get your bottle, if you're working with an adult, they could use a craft knife. That's the easiest way to get started cutting a bottle. You can try doing this with a pencil, but it tends to break your pencil. You can also try using your scissors, but it's much easier to hurt yourself that way. So if you have an adult, that can help do this first cut. You can see on this bottle, I'm just following these ridges, and that'll help me cut around in a circle which will match. So we just carefully work our way around the bottle. Don't worry too much if the line is a little bit wobbly. It's not the end of the world. Nobody will see this once all the plastic's on. So you can set that bottom bit to one side. Now once you've got it like this, maybe your teachers will do this first bit and take the bottom off the bottles, and they'll just give you this bottle. From this point on, you can just use a pair of scissors. So if you get your pair of scissors and you just cut up into the bottle the width that you want your hoop to be. You can see I'm just using the lines again so that I know that I'm cutting in a straight line all the way around, and that where I start will match with where I finish. I think this is about 1 inch, so 3.5 centimetres wide. It could be a little bit smaller, but don't make it too small, otherwise it won't be able to support the plastic. So once you've got that cut out, you can see you've got this gap in it which we need to tape up. So I'm using this brown masking tape, which is paper tape. That can be seen much easier on the camera, but if you don't want it to be noticeable, you could just use normal sellotape as well. And so we just wrap it around like that, and there's your ring held together. So in case you have a bottle like this one that doesn't have the lines wrapping around it, which is a good guide for cutting, here's a way of getting two parallel lines, an easy way of drawing two parallel lines on any shape bottle. So all you're going to need is a piece of paper, a bit of scrap paper or an old envelope will do. You just need it to be long enough to wrap around your bottle. Then if you just use a ruler and a pencil and draw a straight line down like this. I'm using the board to make sure that it's the same width at the top and the bottom. And then we cut this out. Now just get this piece of paper, wrap it around your bottle. Make sure it is lined up like this and not offset. And then you can use a little bit of tape to hold it in place so that when you get your pen, you don't have to worry about holding it at the same time. So if you get a pen, I have a permanent marker here, but you can use any kind of pen or crayon that works on the plastic. Don't worry if it wipes off a little bit. You only need it to be on there long enough to be able to cut the pieces out. So if you go along, all the way along one side, and don't worry too much if the line isn't perfectly straight. It's quite hard to cut plastic perfectly straight anyway. So if you do the top and the bottom, all the way around, and then that bit where the tape is, you'll have to just join up those lines once you take it off. So you can see you've now got two lines that go all the way around your bottle, and I'll just match up that one. And now the process is exactly the same. So you will need a knife or help getting a hole in your bottle to start the first cut, and then you can do the second cut just like the round bottle which I showed you before. If you really don't have anyone that could help you with a craft knife or getting a hole in your bottle like this, if you to use a large kind of yogurt pot like I've got here, one side's already open so you can get your scissors in much easier, and you can just cut the rim off the top of a pot like this. So this step is really only if you'd like to make your windsock into something you can hang in your garden, on a tree, or on the fence at either school or at home. It's easier to put the holes in now before we attach all of the plastic. So if you might like to do that, there's no harm in using the hole punch now to do that. It only takes a couple of seconds. If you get a hole puncher, wiggle it on. It can be a little tough to get under there. And then give it a squeeze, take it off, and then we can just check here that the hole isn't over the edge. And you just want to put a second hole across the ring on the opposite side. We're not going to add the string just yet, as it tends to get in the way when we're attaching the plastic, but we know the holes are there for when we need it later. Now we're going to be cutting the strips out of plastic bags, so those are bits that are going to blow in the wind. You can use plain plastic bags, ones from supermarkets. This is a cereal bag which has got a few different colours on. All sorts of different colours, and a variety would be best. If you don't have any plastic bags, you can use tissue paper, coloured tissue paper, but just make sure that you don't go out in the rain with that, or you leave it hanging in a tree because it will fall apart pretty quick. To start with, I'm going to show you what I do with this kind of cereal packaging. Now this is a little smaller than you'd need, so what I'm going to do is first I'm going to take off this piece here, which is the kind of thick, heavy seal part. And then I'm going to cut some strips. I'm going to do them about 2.5 centimetres wide. You could probably do them a little thinner or a little wider, but too thin and they will tear. You can see where I've cut this, it's a loop, joined at both ends. So you just want to use your scissors and either, oh, it's a bit too tough to tear, so I'm going to snip that off. and that is a good length for a strip. For the plastic bags, the best way of doing this is actually if you fold the plastic bag up like this and have it nice and flat. What you can do now is you can use your scissors and you can cut lots of different strips with just a couple of snips. So if I go along and do a few of these, and you can do a few different types of widths if you like. And now if you open them up like this, you'll see that again it's a hoop, so if you just separate it like that. Now these longer ones are actually a little bit easier to attach, I think, to your ring. So now you just need to get on and cut out a lot of different strips like this. Maybe if you're working with a friend and you both do a different colour bag, you can mix them up so you have a bit of variety. I've got quite a lot of these white ones which are a little bit boring, but maybe you could use a lot of different colours to make your hat a bit more fun. So hopefully you've got a big pile of long strips now, and we're going to get our ring back. And this is what you're going to do with the longer lengths. So these ones are probably about 40 centimetres long. Any shorter than this and we'll use a different method. But if you fold it in half like this, so you have a loop, thread that loop through your ring, and then so you can see that's caught, then get the two loose ends and pass them through like this. And then just gently pull that so it's tight and holds onto the ring. Don't pull too hard because it will stretch the plastic, and depending on the strength of the plastic you're using, it might even snap it. So you can do that gently. So I'll show you again. Fold a piece in half, create a loop at one end. It's not important that it's exactly half. Have that hole, pass the two ends through, and just gently pull that so it's nice and tight. So one more time, create a loop, pass that through the ring, hold it open, pass the two loose ends through, and gently bring it tighter around. So now you just need to continue that all the way around your hoop. Make sure that these ribbon bits go in the same direction, so you can see there how I've got it on the wrong side and I've just wiggled it back round. That's just so that the wind, when it catches them all a little bit better. You can leave little gaps as well, or you could really fill it up and you could maybe see what difference that makes. So carry on all the way around. That's method number one. So you can see these shorter pieces, which were from kitchen packaging, are much, much shorter than the ones I've just been using the loop technique with. They are actually a little bit less than half. So for these ones, we're just going to use a different method because there's not enough length for us to hoop it round in the same way. You can see that the bits trailing behind for the wind to keep hold of will be very short. So for this, we're just going to use a little bit of tape, and we're just going to tape it directly onto the outside of the ring. So I'm using this brown tape, and again, you could use clear tape. This is just a little bit easier for you to see on the camera. So you can see I'm going to use a bit of tape and fold it over the top like that. Make sure you push it down nice and strong so it doesn't get blown off in the wind. So if you're using the tissue paper, colourful tissue paper instead of the plastic, we're going to be using the same method, so with tape, and I'm just going to show you why here. So you can see, even though this is nice as long enough to fold in half, if we use the same technique with the very thin paper, when we pull it tight like this, it's very easy for the paper to break away. The tissue paper is a lot thinner than plastic and a lot weaker. So to avoid this happening, I would suggest just to use tape from the start. So rather than taping them on one by one, what I'd suggest is if we get a length of tape like this, you can actually attach a few pieces of this tissue paper on together. So you can see I'm just sticking it halfway up, so there's still plenty of sticky tape above where the tissue is for when we stick it on the bottle. If the tissue paper is very long like this, you can fold it in half and get 2 bits to trail off your ring for the price of 1. So once you've filled up your bit of tape like this, if you do it in 3 or 4 pieces, we just get that and attach it around the outside of the ring. And just make sure that you really push this down. Tape doesn't stick particularly well to plastic, so it will hold, but you'll just have to make sure you push it down quite a lot so it's definitely got the glue on there. So all you need to do now is repeat that around the ring and your windsock is done. You can always use a mixture of these 2 techniques if you want to use plastic and paper, or if you've got some very short pieces of plastic and some long ones. If you'd like to make the hanging version rather than the wearing version, this is the part where you add your string and then it'll be finished. So if you measure about 60 centimetres length of string, and that'll give you plenty to tie it on and to hang it up outside. So if you just look for the first hole, and hopefully you haven't taped over it. So there is my first one, and I'm just going to put the string through one hole and tie it, and tie a knot. Then tie a second one just to make sure it's nice and firm. Go across to the other side and look for the hole. There's the other hole, and you can move the plastic one side or the other if it helps to free up the space, and then just do the same thing. One knot and the second one just to make sure. And if you're not making the wearable one, that's that done. So here's a little test with a fan on my desk so you can see how it would work in the wind. So now we're going to be making this hat base. So first thing we're going to do for this is we're going to cut 2 strips out of cardboard, and one of them is going to go around your head, which you're going to measure, and then afterwards we're going to put this one, which stops the first bit from falling over your eyes and gives us a place to attach our windsock to on the top here. Although I said we're going to need 2 strips, I'm actually going to cut out 3, as I don't think my piece of cardboard is quite long enough to fit around my head, so I might have to join 2 together. Before we start measuring, if you have a look, can you see these wiggles down the side of the cardboard and the lines that run across it? Now these are going to be important as to how you cut out your strips. You want the lines of the corrugation to go across the short width of the strip. So if the strip's coming down like this, we want them going across like that. So I'm going to start with my ruler and I'm going to make a mark at 4, 8 and 12. And then I'm going to bring them down to the bottom and do the same. So 4 centimetres is quite a good width for strength and also for it not to be too wide. You might want to put marks a little bit further down your cardboard as well, just to make sure your ruler can reach between all of them. So once you've done these marks, you can line your ruler up against them and bring the line all the way from one end of your cardboard to the other. So my cardboard does actually carry on off the camera. And this is just a really good technique to get parallel lines so you know they're the same width all the way up. Once you've got all these measured, you just need to cut them out. Once you've got them all cut out, if you use your fingers and thumbs like this to push down of the corrugation, and that will just help you make the piece of cardboard round so it wraps around your head. Can you see how that curves now nicely? Now, if you remember me telling you about the lines going this way and explaining why it was important, I'm going to show you on this one where the lines go the other way. I'm going to show you how this one bends. So if you can see how this one bends, even using my thumbs and my fingers, it's got all these angles, which means it won't be as comfortable to wear. So that's why I suggested you cutting them out like this with the flutes down the side. That's the corrugation, rather than doing it this way. So now we've got a piece like this. We need to measure it around your head. Now my piece is definitely too small to fit around my head. So if yours is the same, just get yourself a piece of tape and give yourself a bit of an overlap like this. Put some tape on the join and wrap all the way around. And then put a piece of tape on this second one as well, just to make sure it's nice and strong. Now you've got that. If you lift it up and measure it around your head, so what you're doing is you're overlapping the two pieces like this, and you're just measuring it nice and tight around your head. So once you've got it so that it's sitting tight against your head, so just lift it off slowly, keep hold of the size, and then get a piece of tape to secure it. You might want a bit of help from a friend for this bit. So it helps if you actually prepare a little bit of tape before you measure your head. I'm going to measure it around my head now and lift it off carefully, and I'm holding the two bits together like that. And I'm going to do the same thing again, so I'm going to put a piece of tape over that join, push it down nice and firm, and then I'm going to cut this extra piece off, and then I'm going to do the same thing again and just secure down that little bit there so it doesn't come undone. And that is the first one done. So now we've just got the top bar to go. So if you take the last strip that you've got, same thing, if you bend down all those lines so that it's ready to curve around the top of your head. And then we just take one end and we're going to secure it to the ring that we've just made, sticking straight up in the air. So like this, at right angles. Not off to the side, but perfectly straight. And then if we get a piece of tape, push it down, and then you can do a second piece that just loops round underneath to make sure it's nice and strong. Give it a wiggle, and once you've got that, we're going to be curving it round over the top of our heads. And we want this curve to touch the top of your head, so we're stopping it from falling into our eyes, but you don't want this curve to be miles up above your head, otherwise it won't take the weight. If you get someone to help you, they could use a pencil and make a little mark just along the bottom of the cardboard here while it's still on your head, and that means when you take it off, or if you accidentally let go, you know where to cut it. So if you then cut that line and use tape just like you did on the other side, so you want to make sure it goes opposite and even. Piece of tape underneath like that, and you can see how just with one piece of tape it's a bit wobbly, so we're going to put that second one on now, making sure it's nice and straight again, and that is our hat base done. Last thing to do to complete your wearable windsock is to attach the windsock to the top of the hat that you've just completed. So I'm going to do this one with plastic first. You'll be able to slide the pieces of plastic out the way like this, and that will create a space. So we're putting the ring on top like this in the middle of your hat. So we're going to attach that with a piece of tape. So if you get yourself a long piece of tape, make sure you're holding all the plastic out the way. You don't want to catch any pieces in there. Place it inside the hoop and make sure it's nice and straight like that. And pop it on the top of your hat. So you want it to be right on the top, and then wrap the tape round and really push that down. Give it a wiggle, see whether it's strong enough, and then you can move these plastic bits back round and even them up a little bit. And if you've made one with tissue paper and you've attached it with tape, you can see you can't move these pieces out of the way. So if you forgot to leave a gap, like I did, if you just choose a spot between two different pieces of the tissue paper and just split it either way, and then you're doing the same thing. So you're getting your tape and you're running it across, and try and avoid catching any of the little bits of tissue, and then just put the tape across the middle like that, so it's halfway between the two pieces of paper. You can kind of fold them out of the way. If you want to, you could remove them completely. So then it is just exactly the same process as I've just shown you. So you want to put it on the very middle of your hat, fold over the tape on both sides like that. These two ones are a little bit crushed, but it's not the end of the world. And then again, give it a little wiggle. Make sure it's not going to fall off. And then put it on and go outside and see if you can find some wind. So this is just a little bonus that you don't have to do, but it's about adding texture to your windsocks. So you can only do this with the plastic strips. If you've used paper, then you won't be able to do it with those ones. So you can see how these two pieces at the top that I've laid out have kind of got these wiggles or zigzags. And this is just something I discovered you can do with plastic, which was quite nice. So if you hold a strip like this, and you can see I've got them between my thumb and my forefinger, and I'm moving my left hand out left and my right hand out right. So I'm just doing this gently. I'm not pulling it too much, just so it pulls a little. And then I'm moving my thumbs and my finger down one by one, and I'm just keeping on pulling. And you can see how that gives a zigzag effect. Now, depending on the plastic you use, it might be harder or easier to pull. So you can see this one pulled very thin straight away, and you don't want to pull it that thin. So if the plastic is very thin, you might just have to pull very gently to get the zigzag effect. You don't have to do this on all the strips on your windsock. It's just quite a nice way of adding a little bit of texture. This one, which was the packaging plastic, I actually found absolutely impossible, you see, to do it at all. So it might depend on what plastic bags you're using as to whether you can do this or not. One of the other things you can do to add texture is just by making some really thin ends like that, and see how the wind plays around with those. Anyway, I hope you've had fun making your wearable windsock, and hopefully it's a windy day outside so you can actually test it.